Yannicone against Apple. Mr. Yannicone?
Greetings, distinguished panel. Plaintiff is here to extend my courtesy to this honorable court to answer any questions the panel may have. But first, a summary in deferring to plaintiff's brief. Plaintiff's brief is very clear as to the true facts, real issues, and rules that apply to this case. Clearly, the administrative law judge did not base his decision on the probative evidence. This case must be remanded to the SSA by mandate to fully develop the administrative record as provided for in Webb versus Finch, as cited in plaintiff's brief at page 26, paragraph 4. Plaintiff has the statutory right to all the SSA records pertaining to Peter Yannicone as the legal representative of my father's estate and as the party in interest in this action. Those rights must be protected by this court, as cited in plaintiff's brief at page 27, paragraph 2. Quote, plaintiff appellant is entitled to receive a certified copy of all additional records disclosed in developing the record and a verified statement upon completion of the development of the record by the SSA that an exhaustive release, as mandated by this court, has been finalized to verify that no other records remain undisclosed or unaccounted for to be subscribed under oath by the SSA Commissioner, unquote. Plaintiff's pro se claim against the defendant SSA Commissioner, as upheld by this court's opinion of April 27, 1998, legally and properly enables plaintiff to move against the SSA Commissioner to produce the November 1976 application made for Peter Yannicone that plaintiff asserts was filed correctly for spousal benefits.
Mr. Yannicone, did you receive a copy of the Commission's letter, which was addressed to this court, saying that the Commissioner agrees to calculate and...
Yes, I'll address that in 1 second.
But agrees to calculate and pay the benefits...
I'm going to address that in 1 second.
...have claimed.
Yes, I'm going to address that. Contrarily, defendant SSA Commissioner implies in his brief at page 5, paragraph 2, and at page 7, paragraph 1, that the November 76 application was filed incorrectly for retirement benefits without proof of sufficient evidence. The fact that the SSA Commissioner is willing to make back payments under a false pretext does not make this action moot, as the defendant SSA Commissioner implies in his brief at page 7, paragraph 2, and since plaintiff would not receive full remedy to include interest, pro se litigant compensation, and other damages sought by plaintiff, and that would be entitled to plaintiff upon the production of the SSA records by the SSA Commissioner that will prove plaintiff's charges as made against SSA Commissioner and as made against proper party defendant Marie Law in this action for conversion of the SSA funds at issue in this action as the former fiduciary. The SSA, from the ALJ determination to defendant SSA Commissioner's brief, avoids what its own administrative records deceivingly imply, that the, quote, file was destroyed in 9/84, unquote, as shown in plaintiff's appendix, page 8, 28, 41, 87, 150, and by the recent informal letter made March 5th, 1998, appendix page 151, in a violation of Rule 5, U.S. Code Service, section 552AE5, as cited in plaintiff's brief at page 18. Plaintiff, however, after review of what was described to me as the, quote, incomplete duplicate claim file of Mamie Yannicone, unquote, found no indication whatsoever that any file was destroyed in 9/84. The only reference...
You've reserved a minute for rebuttal. You may use that now if you wish.
I do.
But if you wish to have a minute for rebuttal, then you...
Well, can I have another? I am pro se, and I just have a few paragraphs to go.
You may use that minute for rebuttal right now, if you wish. It's your choice.
I'll continue.
Very well.
The only reference to anything being destroyed, like I said, I reviewed what was described to me as the, quote, incomplete duplicate claim file of Mamie-Onicom. The only reference to anything being destroyed in 9/84 is clearly shown on the SSA ACR disposition form, appendix page 153, whereupon it is noted, quote, original folder destroyed 9/84, unquote, and where it is stated, this, quote, this form must be completed and attached to each folder list package. And where my Mamie-Onicom's SSA number appears 126052576. Plaintiff has submitted this original SSA certified copy of this document, appendix page 153, in the U.S. District Court file CV555S, docket number 52, as explained in plaintiff's affidavit at paragraph 26, filed September 8, 1998, as Exhibit I. This court is empowered by Congress to issue any writ in the aid of exercises of jurisdiction as provided by 28 U.S. Code Service Section 1651. Further, this court must avoid further delay of relief to plaintiff where delay is avoidable and relief is proper, and as provided in Parsons v. Heckler, as cited in plaintiff's brief at page 29, paragraph 2.
Mr. Onicom, you'll have to rely on your brief for the rest. Thank you. We'll hear from the other side.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Good morning. May it please the court, my name is Sandra Beresfeld and I represent Appalachia Social Security Administration in this case. We intend to...
Could you tell us exactly what your position is? I see you listed as an assistant United States attorney, or as an assistant regional counsel, or as a senior attorney for the Social Security Administration. Do you hold all of those positions?
No, ma'am. No objection. The position that I hold is listed as both assistant regional counsel, which is a generic term used in the Social Security Administration, and also senior attorney, which is the term that's been printed on our business cards.
So you're not an assistant United States attorney?
No, and if
indicated on the last page of the brief.
I apologize. I'm not. We intend to rest on our brief unless the court has any questions.
That was my only question for you.
I'm very sorry about that.
I just have one question. Is there anything that you're offering to give him that he could get? Is there anything else that he can get by this appeal if he prevails on this appeal? Is he able to get costs or fees or anything of that sort?
Well, I guess our position would be that after the court enters its order, that he would be able to apply for such costs, fees.
In the district court?
In the district court.
That's what I'm asking you. I'm not stating it. I'm asking a question. If we do what you want us to do, what happens to the case? And what happens to his claim for costs and fees?
His claim for costs and fees, I believe is addressed in the brief. We said that in the event that the court dismisses his claim, he could bring up an action for costs. However... Surely not another action. Anything but that. Just how does he get it? I could make... Are you conceding here that he's entitled to fees and costs? Fees, no.
What is he entitled to?
He may be entitled to costs, but as far as the attorney's fees...
Maybe or is entitled? Which is it?
Well...
You concede that he's entitled to costs, correct?
I guess it would be the amount of the cost.
All right, let's put that down as a concession. Is that agreeable to you?
Yes.
What else is he entitled to? Anything else? And why is that?
Because as a non-attorney, he's not entitled to his legal fees in this action.
Okay, fine.
How many
There is no, we addressed that in our brief, there is no interest available in Social Security cases, Schillicky versus Schweiker.
So can we, let's assume for the argument you prevail here, should we just enter a judgment based on your concession of cost? We don't have to remand this, is that right?
For the purpose of costs?
Yeah. Is there any need to remand this? Except for computation?
We did state at page 9 of our brief, to the extent that he's seeking costs on his prior appeal, this is footnote 5 of page 9, he should have raised the issue at the time of his prior appeal.
But you're now agreeing that he's entitled to costs for the whole time, right?
Not his prior
for
appeal.
Both?
Not his prior appeal.
But in the district court.
My understanding is that with regard to costs in district court, that they are supposed to be brought in district court, but it would be a matter of looking at and submitting the
Seems equitable, doesn't it, given the fact that after these many months or years he's prevailed? Doesn't it seem reasonable to you that at a minimum the costs incurred in these various proceedings be paid?
Yeah, we certainly don't seek further litigation in this case.
So you're agreeing with that? You're conceding and stipulating to giving him costs for the various proceedings?
Well,
Except the prior appeal.
Except for the prior appeal, and that the amount of the costs would, of course, have to be determined, subject to calculation.
But surely if your position is that he's entitled to what he's been seeking all this time, and it's a period of years, I'm not sure why he wouldn't be entitled to costs from day one. At what point does the Social Security Administration look at this claim, or at any claim, and decide whether somebody's entitled to benefits?
Well, this has been a somewhat unusual course of litigation, but...
I don't think it's unusual. I mean, somebody's sought benefits that they're entitled to, and now years and years later, the Social Security Administration just concedes that they're entitled to it. You certainly couldn't pay it if he wasn't entitled to it. Statutorily, that would be impossible.
That's right.
So he is entitled to it. I don't know. What I don't understand is why Mr. Yannacone's been litigating this for years and years and years, and now on the eve of oral argument, in the second oral argument in the Second Circuit, somebody bothers to go and figure out what the estate is entitled to. It's inconceivable. It's a terrible waste of time for everybody.
Yes, I agree, Your Honor. Just with regard to your question...
So why don't you at least consider going back to your clients and suggesting that they pay the cost of the first time around?
I would certainly do that, Judge.
Thank you. We'll reserve our decision.